There's not much I can say about 2v8 that hasn't been said already. Yes, it's insanely fun. Yes, the queue times for killers are absolutely terrible. And yes, it has changed Dead by Daylight as we know it. It's something people had been begging to get for years before it actually became a part of the game. A new mode where you could have more survivors, multiple killers, bigger maps, and way more of the insane chaos that really makes DBD shine. At a glance, it's exactly what we were asking for, and it's been that way pretty much the entire time we've gotten it. However, with every new instance of 2v8, more and more issues have become noticeable. Part of that is because the honeymoon period has all but completely worn off at this point, and it's gotten easier and easier to really start analyzing the choices behavior made while bringing the game mode to life. Some of these issues are baked into the design of the game mode itself, and some others have become problematic due to multiple changes over time. Well, I think for the most part, 2v8 is a super fun breath of fresh air for the game. That doesn't mean it's flawless, and if I don't point out the issues I see, well, 2v8 might never improve in an impactful way. Remember, this is a game mode that some people are advocating to become a permanent way to play Dead by Daylight, and if that's ever going to happen, well, we need to make sure some of the shortcomings have been considerably ironed out. 2v8 is great, but it could be better. And today I want to talk about the growing problems with 2v8 and how we could possibly push this incredibly novel game mode in a better direction. Those of you who have been watching the channel for a while now might remember that I talked about 2v8 some time ago, specifically 9 months ago. I could tell you to go watch that video, but I wouldn't put you through that agony. Speaking of which, I'd like to formally apologize to anyone who watched my videos back then. For some reason, I always sounded sick and wouldn't edit my videos nearly as much as I do now. It's actually painful for me to watch those videos with hindsight. I sound much more energetic and annoying these days, which is somehow an improvement compared to that other guy who was talking. Luckily for you, my general thoughts about 2v8 haven't changed a whole lot since then, so you won't have to sit through the drudgery that was my old content. I still think 2v8 is a ton of fun, and I'm never annoyed when it comes back like some other people are for some reason. Compared to the base game, 2v8 is a much more casual way to play Dead by Daylight, and I don't find myself nearly as concerned about winning as I do when playing the classic 1v4 of DBD. I think that's the biggest appeal that 2v8 actually has. Regular Dead by Daylight, especially for the killer side, can be very stressful when it feels like everything is on your shoulders. But 2v8 eliminates that almost entirely by increasing the amount of players on each side. You now have more survivor teammates to watch do absolutely nothing while you get your ass handed to you, and for the killer, you have a teammate to blame when things don't go the way you planned. It's a win-win. The more casual nature of 2v8 really tends to eliminate the sweaty feeling that most 1v4 games of DBD have, and I think that's a huge reason we see such a boost of players when 2v8 comes back around every couple of months. It's just fun. You don't need to worry too much about what you're bringing or how you're playing. You can just play. And I think that's a big reason that so many people adore 2v8. I mean, sure, content creators might not like it too much because it doesn't do great things for their queue times or viewer count typically, but that's really only a thing me and a few others care about. When people aren't watching DBD content because they're actually playing the game, I'd say that's a good thing. However, everything has its downsides and 2v8 is no exception. Yes, I still think 2v8 is almost a perfect game mode, but it is starting to wear my patience thin in a couple ways, and I think I've earned the right to talk about it. Obviously, if you don't care about the problems I'm about to talk about, that's fine. Enjoy yourselves. I'm not trying to take that away from you, but there are things that I personally think could use some adjustments. So hear me out. I think I might make you realize a few things. One of the biggest concerns people had for the game mode of 2v8 conceptually was, well, generator speed, game pace. The classic 1v4 form of Dead by Daylight can already feel pretty shitty when it comes to the speed generators can be completed at. And the idea of throwing 4 more survivors into the mix, well, you might understand why people were worried about this transferring over or even being worse in 2v8. The biggest question and determining factor was about how much a second killer could prevent that problem from being too egregious. Now that we've had 2v8 for a while, has that become a problem? Well, it entirely depends on the killers you and your teammate are playing. The stronger killers on the 2v8 roster, a la Nurse, Blight, Billy, or even Wraith, can keep up with more survivors in the match. But killers that are much weaker by comparison, such as Trapper, Deathslinger, Ghostface, or Pyramid Head, will be fighting against the clock the entire time. Whether you consider this a problem with 2v8's general match design, or some killers not being properly buffed to accommodate the faster-paced gameplay of 2v8, it's noticeable regardless. The survivors being able to group up on generators generators so easily, as well as the lack of side objectives, really contributes to games feeling like they're moving way faster than they probably should be. Why do totems still not do anything? I mean, come on, they're on the map, but they're not used for anything? Why not make it so cleansing totems decreases ability cooldowns or heals you halfway like one of the herbs did in the Resident Evil's version of 2v8? Or maybe you could give a class some kind of boon ability, or make a killer class with a hex ability. Really? Nothing? This really feels like a missed opportunity, and I'm disappointed Behavior hasn't tried something at least. I think that alone would make generator speed less difficult to counter in some games. This issue doesn't just extend to how fast generators are done, but also the amount of pallets on each map. Again, stronger killers can get a hit at most tiles, but the weaker ones, well, they'll be pulling their hair out just trying to down a survivor most of the time, especially the killers that have most of their pallet gameplay boiled down to 50-50s, like Nemesis, Deathslinger, or Huntress to name a few. The only thing preventing this from becoming a bigger talking point, in my opinion, is the fact that most survivors who play 2v8 just pre-drop pallets like their life depends on it. This makes it not nearly as frustrating most of the time, but if you've played against a survivor who knows how to connect things, well, chasing them feels like the equivalent of being gunned down on the street. When playing as a killer without a chase ability like Wraith, Ghostface, or Trapper, you really just have to leave a survivor if you don't get the first hit easily. Some of you could probably argue that this is just a part of playing certain killers, and sure, I'd probably agree with you, but for a faster game mode like 2v8, there's a reason you only ever see like 4 different killers in your matches. Nevertheless, I think both the game's pace and palette play can be argued in favor of if you really tried. And I honestly think you could boil down both of these issues towards being directly tied to some killers just being underbuffed for the rapidly paced game mode of 2v8, which is something I'll talk about in a little bit. What I think is absolutely an undeniable problem with 2v8 is the game mode's endgame. Once all 8 generators of 2v8 are done, the killers are now in a terrible position. Not only are they now in a losing game, typically, but their options for map pressure are also extremely limited. Thanks to hooks being completely replaced by cages in 2v8, when a survivor is down during the endgame, the killer is put in a spot where they are forced to slug the survivor out, assuming the survivor isn't dead on hook, or dead on cage. You get it. Based on the way cages work, if a killer decides to pick up a survivor and cage them, that survivor will be sent across the map, possibly right next to an exit gate, where they can be swiftly saved by their teammates and leave through the open gate, leaving the killer with really the only option of leaving the survivor on the ground and hoping they don't get picked up, or pick themselves up. This is such a massive flaw with 2v8 that's been in the game mode since the beginning that I'm shocked Behavior hasn't done something to fix it. Come on, Behavior, you guys love attempting to fix slugging, but you leave this in? Pathetic. This makes the endgame for both killers and survivors pretty sluggish, pun intended, and kills the pace of the game mode. No survivor likes crawling on the ground forever, and killers don't like slowly following that survivor waiting for something to happen. This needs to get addressed. Full stop.
But Skrump, you can't tell Behavior to fix something if you don't know how to fix it yourself.
It's funny you mention that, random internet person, because I think I have the solution for you. When 2v8 first dropped, survivors weren't picked up by the killers, but were instead stomped through the ground to appear in a cage. My idea is that we bring this mechanic back, and instead of sending a survivor across the map into a cage, once the generators are all completed, you can stomp on a survivor to make them appear in a nearby cage, making it so survivors won't spend forever on the ground, and the killer can do a better job of patrolling that survivor. If you were worried about the killers camping that survivor, you could even add a mechanic where the cage appears somewhere else if both killers are within range for too long. I think that would be an interesting thing to try out and would be miles better than what we have now, but it's just an idea. A game idea. Anyway, yeah, 2v8's endgame sucks and definitely needs to be reworked in some capacity to not interfere with the rest of the game's pace. This problem also appears when there are only a few survivors left and multiple generators to be done. If survivors are in a position where they know that doing the generators will probably get them killed and the hatch hasn't spawned yet, it's more often that they just hide, waiting for someone else to be found and caged. This again kills the pace of the game and turns the final moments of a 2v8 match into a waiting game where the killers are forced to patrol around the maps blindly while hoping that a survivor messes up and gives away their location. To fix this, I would make it so survivors' auras are shown randomly if they haven't touched a generator for a while. Not only would this incentivize people to actually play the game, but will stop survivors from just hiding in corners while they wait for their teammates to die, as that directly messes with the game's momentum and leaves a lot of a 2v8 match match to be just waiting, and no one likes waiting, right? With the faster speed of 2v8 games, I think a change like this would be fine, and prevents a lot more boring gameplay from happening when a match's outcome has already been determined, just to speed things along. Watching your teammates wait for you to die so they can get the hatch will never not be the most annoying thing ever. Ignoring issues that are baked into 2v8 from a conceptual standpoint, we still have some problems relating to the abilities survivors are given based on the specific classes they pick, mainly the Escapist and the Scout. This is gonna get a little ranty, so bear with me. The Escapist class has an ability called Silent Rush Bonus, where pressing a button gives them a sprint burst on command which they can give to other people around them, assuming they're not exhausted already. This, by far, gets under my skin the most while playing 2v8. There's nothing more annoying than getting within hit range of a survivor and whiffing because they pressed a single button with no skill requirement. It's absolutely maddening and makes playing most killers extremely annoying. It's gotta go. I don't care, it's gotta go. Not only does it require absolutely no skill to use, but the short cooldown and equally as short exhaustion recovery makes it so you'll end up going against it in almost every single chase against someone using the class, making it extremely prevalent and a non-stop thorn in your side while trying to hit survivors. Get rid of it. I don't care. Or at least make it not nearly as frustrating to go against. Either make it so it only applies to other people or make the cooldown longer. Seriously, I'm not fucking around. Do something about it. It sucks. The other ability I find myself especially annoyed by is the Scout's ability to rebuild pallets. Not only are there so many pallets on 2v8 maps, but having a class be able to rebuild multiple pallets is awful to go against, especially when playing certain killers who can't get rid of them quickly. There's nothing more heartbreaking than getting down a strong pallet at one point in the game, only to come back to that area and find that pallet completely restored and there being nothing you could have done to prevent it. It takes almost no time to do, and while the cooldown is somewhat long, you might also have 4 survivors with the ability to rebuild those pallets, which makes it feel like there's almost nothing you can do in order to manage the resources in a resource management game. I understand that 2v8 is meant to be much more casual than 1v4, and obviously those are going to be much different balance-wise, but resources are still incredibly important, and giving the survivors the ability to say fuck you to that aspect of the game goes way too far in order to make the game mode more laid back. I want to give a quick honorable mention to the guide's ability to trap generators with blast mine, as that can also be really aggravating to go against. Well, it's not nearly as egregious as the other 2 abilities I mentioned previously, considering that kicking generators is the only way to regress them. Well, I'm sure you can imagine. Speaking of which, the fact that the gen kick prevention shows up in 2v8 is dumb too, considering how fast generators can be done and how limited your options are at regressing them. Some base game things did not need to make their way into 2v8, and I don't understand why they're even there to begin with. The last thing I really want to touch on here is how certain killers have been treated in terms of their buffs compared to some others. When adding a killer into 2v8, I think it's pretty natural to expect them to receive some solid buffs to be able to match the faster pace of the game mode. After all, 1v4 is much slower compared to the adrenaline high that is 2v8, and some killers' powers are not going to feel very good when trying to match that pace. For some killers, they got buffs that are appropriately effective for that game mode, but others really didn't, and a few choices have been made that completely baffle me. For example, Deathslinger feels pretty terrible to play in 2v8, and I have a hard time imagining anyone wanting to play him over Huntress, who literally does everything better than him. Deathslinger still feels super slow to play. While his reloading speed does feel nice, things like his reeling speed and chain durability leave a lot to be desired. The same goes for a killer like Pyramid Head, who was recently added for this iteration of 2v8. Honestly, you could tell me Pyramid Head is the exact same as he was originally and I'd believe you. He feels pretty underpowered in 2v8 and is extremely punishing to mess up with. If you don't play perfectly with him, I wouldn't blame you for picking literally any other killer on the roster. It just doesn't make sense to me why killers like Blight and Nurse get buffed significantly, but killers like Pyramid Head and Deathslinger feel almost the exact same with maybe some minor adjustments to their base kit. Even a killer like Nemesis feels almost the exact same, but at least Nemesis is great at shredding through pallets like they aren't even there, so it doesn't feel as punishing for him. And then we have the choices that just baffle me, like making Ghostface's exposed duration shorter. Literally, why would you make that change? Sure, it's easier to get in power and stalk, but there are also twice as many survivors to reveal you. It just doesn't make sense to me. Ghostface is more of a support killer than anything else in 2v8, and making the exposed duration shorter really limits how much he can help his teammate. Or, for another, why would you even keep Pyramid Head's torment mechanic? Sending survivors to cages is already base kit with 2v8, and the only reason I could think of for using Pyramid Head's torment is either to ignore flashlight and pallet saves, or to instantly kill a survivor who is on death hook. But both of those things are pretty situational, and I don't understand why they wouldn't change that mechanic to give it something new to do in 2v8. That really feels to me like Behavior didn't want to put in the effort to make something new for Pyramid Head, as keeping Torment the way it is just feels more like an oversight than anything else. At the end of the day, 2v8 is still a great game mode, despite the problems I may have with it. Like I said, I'm always happy to see it come back every couple of months, and I'll always be willing to queue into 2v8 matches at the drop of a hat. However, that doesn't mean it's perfect. While the game mode is really fun, there are a few things that I think definitely need some modifications before the game mode will reach the insane heights I know it has the potential to. However, with the success of the game mode and how little people seem to complain about it, I don't know if Behavior is going to be willing to change the fundamental design of it in any meaningful capacity. Only time will tell. Until then, that's it for me, gamers. Have a great day.